Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to our hadith class. We are doing the kitab known as Riyaadhus Saaliheen of Imam Nawawi rahimahullah. And tonight, inshallah ta'ala, we are starting a topic which is extremely important and yet has become somewhat of a misunderstood topic in today's time, nonetheless. So, without delays, let us begin. Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. So the chapter that we are doing tonight is Babun fil Amri bil Ma'rufi wa Nahyi Anil Munkari. The chapter with regards to commanding the good and prohibiting the evil. That's how it's generally translated. Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahi Anil Munkar. And as you see over here, Imam Nawawi rahimahullah, as is the norm, he begins by quoting certain ayat of the Quran. So he begins, he says, قال الله تعالى وَلْتَكُمْ مِنْكُمْ أُمَّةٌ يَدْعُونَ إِلَى الْخَيْرِ وَيَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. In Surah Al-Imran, Allah begins by saying that وَلْتَكُمْ مِنْكُمْ أُمَّةٌ, let there arise from you a group. Ummah here meaning a group. يَدْعُونَ إِلَى الْخَيْرِ, that call towards goodness. وَيَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ, and they command the good and they prohibit the evil. وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ, and they are the successful ones. This is in Surah Al-Imran. Now, just to, if a person were to just deal just with this one ayah, it could take the entire night. That's the depth of this one ayah itself. But you see, in today's world, people would have heard this ayah time and again. And the thing is that unfortunately, it has become only associated with the Tabligh Jamaat, as if this ayah is referring to Tabligh Jamaat, which is not the case. This is an ayah which is directed at each and every single Muslim. It is the command of Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahi Anil Munkar is a communal obligation. If some people are doing it, well and good, then the rest are absolved. But if nobody is doing it, then Allah will, the punishment of Allah is then permissible upon the entire people. In other words, not what I mean by permissible is that people have then invited the punishment of Allah upon them. That's how it works. So Amr bil Ma'ruf, that's the first thing. Or at least I should say, not Amr bil Ma'ruf. But the thing Allah mentions in this ayah here is يَدْعُونَ إِلَى الْخَيْرِ. That's number one. Allah mentions three. People often take this ayah as if it is two things, Amr bil Ma'ruf, Nahi Anil Munkar. But in reality, if you read the ayah, three things are mentioned by Allah. يَدْعُونَ إِلَى الْخَيْرِ is one. يَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ is two. وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَلِ الْمُنْكَرِ is three. So there are three separate things that Allah makes mention of in this ayah. Now the thing is that when it comes to the Tabligh Jamaat, in reality, they do يَدْعُونَ إِلَى الْخَيْرِ, not necessarily Amr bil Ma'ruf, not necessarily Nahi Anil Munkar. And the point of the talk is not here to be bashing the Tabligh Jamaat or anything of the sort, not at all, but to point out what exactly is it that Allah is telling us in this ayah. So when it comes to the Tabligh Jamaat, يَدْعُونَ إِلَى الْخَيْرِ, they call you towards goodness. So we see this being done by the Tabligh Jamaat. They call you to the masjid, they call you to Salah, maybe there's a talk taking place. They call you towards something which is good. That's in its place. That's part and parcel of the ayah. But it doesn't end there. Then Allah says, وَيَأْمُرُونَ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. Now, what is ma'ruf as far as the Sharia is concerned? Ma'ruf is everything of goodness that the Sharia has ordained. So, belief in Allah, a person's aqidah falls part and parcel of ma'ruf. The uh, doing all of the ibadat that Allah has commanded a person with, that is part of ma'ruf. Doing the sunan and nawafil, that is part of ma'ruf. Being kind to people, that is part of ma'ruf. Being kind to animals, that too forms part of ma'ruf. So when you say amr bil ma'ruf, then it encompasses all of this and more. So if you are restricting it to only one particular thing, then you're not doing Amr bil Ma'ruf. If Amr bil Ma'ruf is the performance of your Salah and your Tahajjud Salah and your Sunan and your Nawafil. It's the partaking of Jihad. It is learning the Deen. It is, uh, for example, let's say you're attending a class on Deen, or you are guiding somebody towards some other method of Deen, or like I say, you are partaking in jihad, you are going to the khanka, you are going out in Jamaat, whatever it is, All of this forms part of Amr bil Ma'ruf, because all of these things are Ma'ruf. It falls under the umbrella of Ma'ruf. Thus, all of this is included. And if you are restricting it to one, two things, then you have not understood what Ma'ruf is as far as the deen is concerned. And then over and above this, Allah then adds on, وَيَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ, and they prohibit the evil as well. Now, unfortunately, to use the example again, but you find amongst certain people, they take part in the Tabligh Jamaat and then they will do the يَدْعُونَ إِلَى الْخَيْرِ, but they will not do نَهِي عَنِ الْمُنْكَرِ. And some, okay, they are the ignorant laymen, and then they will make an excuse and they say that when you call people to salah, automatically it is a nahi anil munkar in and of its own self, because if he's doing goodness, he's automatically abstaining from evil. But if that were to be the case, then Allah would not have singled them out. And you see, yad'una ila al-khair, one. Then Allah adds wa. Wa in Arabic means and. And even from an English perspective, and it denotes it's something new. So you do one, and يأمرون بالمعروف, and ينهون عن المنكر. So Allah puts it as 1, 2, 3, and when you do all of this, أولئك, these people then, هم المفلحون, they are the ones who are successful. So that's how Allah put it, 1, 2, and 3. Therefore, for each and every individual, it's not something, oh, okay, the Tabligh Jamaat is doing it, it's fine, it's over. It doesn't work that way. If you are in your individual capacity and you are not calling people towards the goodness, which Allah has, in other words, matters of deen, like I explained, if you are not commanding people with things that are good, if you are not prohibiting things that are evil, then you will still be questioned by Allah, because it's like, you find in that hadith, and Tabligh Jamaat will often quote this as well, which is the Allah told the Malaika, أنقلب مدينة كذا وكذا, أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام, that destroy that particular town and the people that's in it. And the Malaika come and they say that, Ya Allah, in that town is a person لم يعصك طرفة عين, أو كما قال, that in that town is a pious person who has not disobeyed you, not for a wink of an eye. And Allah says, destroy the village with them and him, because فإن وجهه لم يتمعر في ساعة قط, أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام, because destroy him and them, because his face يتمعر, like his face did not change, like a frown, not even a frown crossed his face for the sake of Allah, not even once. So, it's like some people are like, oh, a smiley person, oh, let you do what you do, I'll cook. No, it don't work that way. So Nahy Anil Munkar is an integral. It's freestanding from Amr bil Ma'ruf. يدعون إلى الخير, يأمرون بالمعروف, ينهون عن المنكر. And then you are from the successful ones. But okay, let's move on. So he says, وقال تعالى كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس تأمرون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر. Again in Surah Al Imran, Allah says, كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس, that you are the best of people who have been brought out for mankind. Why are you the best of people? Because of تأمرون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر. You command with the people with good and you prohibit them from evil. Moving on, it says, وقال تعالى خذ العفو وأمر بالعرف وأعرض عن الجاهلين. In this ayah in Surah Al-A'raf, Allah says, خذ العفو. Now you'll go through the translations of this ayah, for example, and you'll find many different type of translations, because of the fact that afu and urf and even أعرض عن الجاهلين has got vast meanings within each and every one of these things. Thus, you'll find many different translations, but it's all encompassed within the vastness of these words. So khudil afu, afu means like forgiveness. So khudil afu, what you'll find in one translation would say that be forgiving. Khudil afu, let forgiveness be part of your nature. Wa'mur bil urf, and do command with urf. Urf being ma'ruf. Urf not being command people with customs, because you got urf and ada, if you know the terminologies of fiqh, you've got urf and ada, the customs and cultures and practices of people. That urf here refers to ma'ruf. Command people with ma'ruf. And wa'arid anil jahilin. And turn away from the ignorant ones. So turn away is one meaning. Another meaning say ignore the ignorant ones. Another one says like, be easy going with those who are ignorant. Different things like this. So obviously, like I say, because of the vastness of the words and the depth of the meaning contained within it, therefore you will find multiple different English translations for this particular ayah. That's from Surah Al-A'raf. But obviously, you can understand over here, وَأَمُرْ بِالْعُرْفِ, and command people with the goodness. That is what Imam An-Nawawi rahimahullah understands it to be. That's why he puts it inside this chapter over here. And that, in fact, is the meaning of وَأَمُرْ بِالْعُرْفِ in any case. وقال تعالى والمؤمنون والمؤمنات بعضهم أولياء بعض يأمرون بالمعروف وينهون عن المنكر. In Surah At-Tawbah, Allah says, the believing men and women, بعضهم أولياء بعض, they are friends of one another. يأمرون بالمعروف, Allah describes now who are the mu'minin and mu'minat. And you see, the thing is mu'minun and mu'minat. Allah did not make a distinction and say, or at least make a specific command saying the Muslim men. Allah said men and women. يأمرون بالمعروف, they command with good. وينهون عن المنكر, and they prohibit the evil. So it's أمر بالمعروف نهي عن المنكر is not a command only for men. Yes, what should be stated on the outset, clear in no ambiguous terms, is the fact that أمر بالمعروف نهي عن المنكر in a public setting is done by men. Amr bil Ma'ruf, Nahi Anil Munkar amongst women is done within the women's circles. Nowadays, you have all of these women who wants to be there on the TV and on this, and then, the celebrity speakers and, all these sorts of stuff. These are people who have strayed from the path of the Sunnah, and thus they do all of these sort of things. But Nahi Anil Munkar, Amr bil Ma'ruf, women will always be dealing with women in life. Women don't exactly live in a bubble under the ocean. So you will be interacting with other women. Now, the man in the street is not dealing with a woman at home. So he will have his women folk that he can interact with. And obviously, there'll be some out there in the street who are all over the place, and thus you will deal with them too. But generally, women are the ones who interact with women, and thus the rule of Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahi Anil Munkar applies from woman to woman, and that's how it should be. Men should be commanding men, and women commanding women. That way you can abstain from the corruptions which tend to take place when a man claims to be doing Nahi Anil Amr bil Ma'ruf with a woman behind closed doors, and those sort of things. But in any case, that was in Surah Tawbah. Then he goes further. He says, وَقَالَ تَعَالَى لُعِنَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا مِنْ بَنِي إِسْرَائِيلَ عَلَى لِسَانِ دَاوُودَ وَعِيسَى بْنِ مَرْيَمَ ذَلِكَ بِمَا عَصَوْا وَكَانُوا يَعْتَدُونَ كَانُوا لَا يَتَنَاهَوْنَ عَنْ مُنكَرٍ فَعَلُوهُ لَبِئْسَ مَا كَانُوا يَفْعَلُونَ. In Surah Al-Ma'idah, these two ayat, he says, Allah mentions here in لُعِنَ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا مِنْ بَنِي إِسْرَائِيل, the kuffar from Bani Israel. So Bani Israel had two types of people: the people who were Muslim at the time and those who had become kuffar. So the kuffar from Bani Israel, in today's time, Bani Israel, Ahlul Kitab, they are all kafir. There's no distinction anymore today. But at the time, in the time of Hazrat Dawood alayhi salam, Hazrat Musa alayhi salam, Hazrat Isa alayhi salam, and so on and so forth, they were Muslim and kafir, like we have today, Muslim and kafir. So the kuffar from Bani Israel, they were cursed على لسان داود وعيسى بن مريم, by Hadrat, they were cursed upon the tongue of Hadrat Dawood alayhi salam, or at least cursed by the tongue of Hadrat Dawood alayhi salam, and cursed by Hadrat Isa alayhi salam. So why specifically these two Anbiya? You can find that in the tafsir. If you look amongst the Jews, they call Hadrat Dawood alayhi salam King David. They've got the qabr of Hadrat Dawood alayhi salam in Palestine. Jews will call it Israel, but nonetheless, so you'll see the Jewish flag draped over the qabr over there and everything of the sort here. They feel that, it's like he was the founder of the Jewish state, the king and everything of the sort. Not in their, or at least in their kufr mind, they don't deem him to be a Nabi. They're just seeing him as being a king. But nonetheless, they supposedly in their claims hold Hazrat Dawood alayhi salam to be in high regard, despite only being really a king in their mind. But nonetheless, Allah says Hazrat Dawood alayhi salam cursed them. And obviously Hazrat Isa alayhi salam, they are the ones who try to get Hazrat Isa alayhi salam killed. And it is on account of the Jews that Hadrat Isa alayhi salam was lifted up to Jannah, and the other person was killed in place of Hadrat Isa alayhi salam, which led the people now to believe Hadrat Isa alayhi salam was crucified. As is mentioned in the tafsir, it was Judas Iscariot, as he's known. You find the Gospel of Judas, the Gospel of Barnabas, and things of the sort, where such things are mentioned. But obviously, in the canonical Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, you're not going to find this sort of thing, because it undermines the entire Christian faith, so to speak. If you start speaking that it wasn't Jesus who was crucified, because if there's no crucifixion, there's no Christianity, as Christians themselves will often make that admission. No crucifixion, then Christianity unravels its seams and just falls apart. But nonetheless, Hazrat Isa alayhi salam cursed them, Hazrat Dawood alayhi salam cursed them. Why? ذَلِكَ بِمَا عَصَوْا وَكَانُوا يَعْتَدُونَ. That is because of the transgression, that the sin, that the disobedience, وَكَانُوا يَعْتَدُونَ, and they used to transgress. Transgression is obviously a very vast thing. They used to kill the Anbiya, they used to disobey the Anbiya. You know, every evil you can think of, you know, when we were doing the tafsir from Tafsir ibn Kathir a couple of years back, it's probably about 10 years now almost. But anyhow, you know, the beginning of Surah Al-Baqarah, and you read it through Tafsir ibn Kathir, which gives you the historical perspective behind the ayat, you really see there was no more evil people on earth than the Jews. You know, the amount of trouble they gave the Anbiya, nobody did it the way the Jews had done. So they transgressed to no end. So, and then Allah goes further and says, كَانُوا لَا يَتَنَاهَوْنَ عَن مُنْكَرٍ فَعَلُوا. One of the evils of the Bani Israel, the kuffar of Bani Israel, is that لَا يَتَنَاهَوْنَ عَن مُنْكَرٍ فَعَلُوا. They would not prohibit the evil that the others used to do. In other words, evil was taking place and no one was doing nahi anil munkar. So لَبِئْسَ مَا كَانُوا يَفْعَلُونَ. Evil was it, the deeds that they used to do. Moving on further, it says, وَقَالَ تَعَالَى وَقُلِ الْحَقُّ مِنْ رَبِّكُمْ فَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيُؤْمِنْ وَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيَكْفُرْ. In Surah Al-Kahf, Allah says, وَقُلِ الْحَقُّ مِنْ رَبِّكُمْ, and say the truth is from your Lord. فَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيُؤْمِنْ وَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيَكْفُرْ. So whoever wishes, let him believe, and whoever wishes, let him disbelieve. Now this is not a حرية الاعتقاد, as some misguided deviants would like to think, you know, like you have freedom of religion. Not at all. It is, in this ayah Allah says, so whoever wishes, let him believe, and whoever wishes, let him disbelieve. It is not Allah saying you have the right to believe if you want to, or be a kafir if you want to. No. If you believe, it is for your benefit, and if you disbelieve, it is to your detriment. You make the decision as to whether you will be amongst the people of Jannah or the people of Jahannam. The truth has come to you from the side of Allah. Either you accept the things that Allah has given you, the good of goodness, or you choose to follow shaitan, and in that case you will join him in Jahannam. That is, whoever wishes, let him disbelieve. There's no choice in the matter. It's like we would say, like a rhetorical question, or like a rhetorical statement over here, that if you want to, you know, people often use this, you know, when a man asks his wife, what's wrong, and she say nothing, then obviously you must know something is wrong, because she's saying nothing, but in reality she's meaning the whole lot that you've done wrong, and you're still going to answer for all of that. But nonetheless, the point being, وَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيَكْفُرْ is never been a thing that if you want to be a kafir, it's all okay, it's all good, you know, you can hold hands and sing kumbaya. It don't work that way. Okay, moving on further, it says, وَقَالَ تَعَالَى فَاصْدَعْ بِمَا تُؤْمَرُ وَأَعْرِضْ عَنِ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. You know, that proclaim that which you have been commanded and turn away from the mushrikeen. You know, ignore them. They will be kafir. You know, you make your calling towards goodness. You give your command, amar bi ma'ruf, and when the mushrikeen want to do this and that, and you know, like laugh and mock and everything, leave them in their kufr. They will die and they will answer for it in due course. Obviously, as is always the case, the Quran is not looked at in isolation, the ayat. Everything has got a context towards it. So there are many ayat of the Quran which were Obviously, Makki ayat. So it would be like turn the other, almost like not turn the other cheek, but like hold back your hands, don't fight, etc., etc. All of these ayat were abrogated with the Madani ayat when jihad was revealed. So nonetheless, turning away from the mushrikeen is in a situation where, let's put it this way, you are downtrodden, you don't exactly have any power and stuff, then you say, sure, وَأَعْرِضْ عَنِ الْمُشْرِكِينَ. But if you are in a situation of power, then you crush the mushrikeen. But that's from Surah Al-Hijr. So moving on, he says, وَقَالَ تَعَالَى أنجينا الذين ينهون عن السوء وأخذنا الذين ظلموا بعذاب بئيس بما كانوا يفسقون. So Allah says, أنجينا الذين ينهون. In Surah Al-A'raf, Allah makes mention of Allah had saved الذين ينهون عن السوء, saved those who had prohibited the evil. ينهون عن السوء. Su is evil, like Munkar is evil, Su is another word for evil. So those who prohibited the evil, Allah saved them. وَأَخَذْنَا الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا. And those who had transgressed, those oppressors, Allah had أَخَذْنَا الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا بِعَذَابٍ بَئِيسٍ بِمَا كَانُوا يَفْسُقُونَ. With a painful, like a serious punishment. Allah had gripped them with a painful punishment because of the corruption that they used to do, in simple terms. Obviously, you'll find much more mention in the tafsir, but that being said, we're not exactly doing tafsir here tonight, despite the fact that we spent the last 22 minutes on just the topic of tafsir, on the ayat which have been mentioned. والآيات في الباب كثيرة معلومة. And Imam An-Nawawi rahimahullah, he says the ayat in this chapter are many and they're well known. But you can look from the fact that he quoted so many ayat, more than any other previous chapter. With every chapter, you can quote many ayat. But with this chapter, you could quote many, many more ayat. But obviously, if he's quoting the entire Quran, all the various ayat in this regard, we'd be sitting till 3 weeks' time just going through the amount of ayat and the tafsir behind it. So at the end of the day, the point being that Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahi Anil Munkar is an extremely important matter of deen. But today it's like people don't even bother with it. I was going to read the hadith, but instead I'm going to mention a principle of fiqh over here, and that will probably use up the rest of our time. So the principle I'm going to be mentioning is with regards to Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahi Anil Munkar. You heard that me mention the importance of how great and necessary this principle of Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahi Anil Munkar is, and that's in its place. But at the same time, Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahi Anil Munkar can only be done with knowledge. If you have no knowledge, you have no place entering the field of Amr bil Ma'ruf or Nahi Anil Munkar. What is meant by this? You find people and they are prohibiting something, and you find this all too common amongst Salafis, for example. They prohibit this is evil, this is haram, this is not allowed, this is this, and it's only because of ignorance on their side. While, for example, they say you can't read Quran for the deceased, you can't read Quran by the graveyard, this is bid'ah, you can't wipe your face with you can't wipe your hands over your face after dua, and this is from the Sunnah. Proven from the Sunnah, proven from other Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhuma, but in their ignorance they tell you no, you can't do it. It's proven. Imam Ahmad rahimahullah, no less of a person, his viewpoint, and it is mentioned in Al-Mughni of Imam Ibn Qudama Al-Maqdisi, one of the most important Hanbali fiqh books, where it stated that the mufta bihi, so to speak, as we would say, the view of the Hanbali madhab is that it is from the Sunnah to recite Quran for the deceased. So Imam Ahmad rahimahullah narrates a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam having recited Quran for the people in the or at least when going to the graveyard, reciting different parts of the Quran. And thus, it is part of the Sunnah to read Quran for the deceased. Now they say, no, you can't do it. So when you are ignorant, you prohibit things which are part of Deen. You just don't know it. So your ignorance is not something which is excused. You are speaking بغير علم, and speaking without knowledge on matters of deen is an extremely serious sin. And yet it's, less than a fly over a person's nose for some people. So that's number one. And number two is Amr bil Ma'ruf. Now you're telling people, oh, you must do this, you must do this, this is good you to do, this and this. And if you've touched the dog, you must go and have a ghusl. You think I'm giving Amr bil Ma'ruf. The Sharia did not say you need to make a ghusl. If a dog, for example, has licked you, the saliva is impure, you wash it off. Now you tell a man you must go and bath. You must throw that clothing away. You can't wash it because the dog licked you on you. And dogs are dirty creatures. And I'm not a fan of dogs in the least. But what is part of deen is part of deen and will never change. Now you come and you telling people something which you feel is something good, or maybe you read something which you didn't understand, you never studied it, you Allama Google told you something over there in English which you didn't get the right end of the stick with, and thus you giving your own Amr bil Ma'ruf, but Amr bil Ma'ruf. Why? Because I came across some quote picture over there which says this is from the Sunnah. All the time it's a fabricated, made up lie which was made up yesterday, but you don't know. Now you spread it and you like, I'm doing Amr bil Ma'ruf. No, you're not. You will still be questioned by Allah for speaking without knowledge. So Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahi anil Munkar is not to be done in ignorance. You need to know that this is right. You need to know that this is wrong. Then you are permitted to speak. If you don't know, you keep silent. You walk away. If you see somebody doing something, maybe for example, you are used to, let's put it this way, you hold your hands beneath your navel in salah. Now you come for the first time and you see a man holding his hands on his sides in salah and he's not folding it. Now you don't know. Now you're like, okay, I'm not sure. I don't know. Maybe he's got a basis for it. So you don't confront him. You don't do anything. You are not guilty in this regard. You are not a person of knowledge, so you don't know. Fine, it's part of the Maliki madhab, so that's in its place. If you had known, well and good. But if you don't know and you stay away because of not knowing, there's no harm on you in that situation. But now you come and you tell him, hey, where you come from with this? There's no basis for this to stand with your hands on your side. That would now be you speaking out of turn because you have no knowledge of what you are saying. That's that. And then a very important principle with regards to Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahi Anil Munkar is that at times Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahi Anil Munkar is haram. And I'll say it again. There are times when it is haram to do Amr bil Ma'ruf and haram to do Nahi Anil Munkar. Now you may be thinking, what on earth are you talking about? The ulama have stated that there are laws and rules with regards to Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahi Anil Munkar. And that is that your Amr bil Ma'ruf and your Nahi Anil Munkar must not bring about a greater Munkar. For example, now here you come and there's a man and he's not performing salah. Now you come and he's like, you trying to get him to come to the masjid. Then you come, but he's one of those knuckleheads. Now you come and you like, you're a youngster, he's an old man. Now you come and you tell him something about salah and then he swears salah because of you. He becomes a kafir because of him swearing salah. And you are deemed as being the conduit which led him to kufr. So your nahi anil munkar, I mean your amr bil ma'ruf, you weren't prohibiting him because he wasn't exactly doing a munkar, you were calling him to salah. But he was one of those people, it's like, who are you? You're a youngster, you have no right to call me. And then he utters kufr on account of you. Then this amr bil ma'ruf is haram because you have led him into kufr on account of it. On the flip side of the coin, you have a case of a person, and this is a very common thing, especially when it comes to parents and elders and people of the sort. Now you come in, they're doing something which is wrong, and you tell them off, so to speak. And on account of it, they utter kufr. This nahi anil, they may be sitting, maybe you have an elder, uncle or whatever, and he's sitting there and he's drinking his castle lager and watching TV, or maybe having zina in the room over there, and you come now and you let's put it this way, you do nahi anil munkar overtakes you and you charge in there and you like lash out at him, and in turn he utters kufr and he rejects he don't even he don't even feel, hey, what is this, what is it, what religion is this, I don't accept the religion. For example, you find people, I don't accept the religion that prohibits things like this here, my deen don't prohibit it. He becomes a kafir because you thought you were doing nahi anil munkar. Your nahi anil munkar, fine, it was a munkar he was doing, you were trying to prohibit it, but you did it in the wrong manner. Thus the crime of kufr is greater than his crime of zina and drinking and everything else. Thus, there are times and places. If you come, for example, and you've got an elder and he or she is doing something which is wrong, you don't correct them there and then. If they open to correction there and then, by all means, you do it, no problem. But if this person is someone that you can't, is going to get upset, and may utter something bad or wrong in this case, then you don't correct him. You can go to another senior, another elder, and you say, oh, this person, if you can speak with him, maybe the alim who he looks up to can now come and mention something in a lecture, or maybe speak to him, things of the sort. Then he may listen. Then that's the way you do it. You are not guilty for delaying correcting him until 3 weeks down the line, when this sheikh, this Maulana, this mufti can go and have a talk to him, or this grandfather can go and have a talk to him. You are not sinful. You did things the right way. So Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahi Anil Munkar is a field where there are many laws attached to it. But the golden principle is this: that your Amr bil Ma'ruf or your Nahi Anil Munkar must not lead to a greater sin. So sins are of degrees. It is one thing for a person to not perform salah. It is another thing for a man to reject salah. While he is not performing salah, he is a sinner. When he rejects salah, he is a kafir. It's one thing for a man to be gay. It's another thing for a man to say he don't accept Islam, which says there's a problem with being gay. Difference between the two. So while he's being gay, he's a sinner, a major sinner. He may be even having 4 husbands on the side over there. He's a major sinner, as long as he says what he's doing is haram. But the minute you do nahi anil munkar and it leads him to reject Islam, then he's a kafir. So the kufr is greater than the sin that he was involved in. Therefore, Nahi anil munkar is not exactly a science, but something which needs to be done with wisdom, looking at each individual situation at the time. What would work best in this situation for this particular person, and then you do it. If you do it in the wrong way and you cause a greater evil, then you will be taken to task. Maybe you are ignorant. For example, let's put it this way. So you thought, I know this uncle. I've never known him to be a rude person. So you come and you speak to him in a nice, kind manner. But little did you know, somebody rode over his pet hamster this morning, so he's been in a bad mood. Now you came and you normally speak to him and things like this. Now you come and you kindly speak with him and you like, this is wrong, a person shouldn't be doing this. And then he blows up and he swears and he rejects Islam, or makes some sort of kufr statement. In this case, you are not at fault because you did things in the right manner. You were not overstepping the bounds. You weren't being here in his face, up close and personal. You weren't doing that. You were following the rules. You were doing things in a kind and decent manner, but he overreacted. So in that situation, you are not guilty. But when you come and you're like, I'm so tired of people who are doing things like this here, and then you overreact, thus he overreacts, and your overreaction causes him to overreact into kufr. So therefore, it is something that needs to be said, because unfortunately sometimes people think nahi anil munkar is just something, if somebody says something, I must stop it here and there right now. I need to say, you evil person, for example, let's say you good for nothing Maulud celebrating, for example, and you lead a person to make a statement of kufr. So therefore, the ulama have stated, and this is across the board. The person finds from Imam Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah and others across the board who have spoken on this topic, that there are rules and regulations when it comes to nahi anil munkar. If your nahi anil munkar leads to a greater munkar, then that nahi anil munkar is not to be done. You leave it for another time in a roundabout way. Next the month, when this person happens to come to the masjid for Jumu'ah, and the Imam can now speak and say, it is not from the Sunnah to celebrate Mawlud, for example, then the person can accept or reject, but with the point being, you do it in a way where it does not bring about another munkar. That's basically how this principle works. And that being said, I know I've taken up far more than the time that we were supposed to, and we didn't even come to the point of or at least to the ahadith of the chapter, but it was nonetheless an important topic that needed to be spoken. And inshallah, I hope somewhat of the topic has been covered. But that being said, we end then for tonight, inshallah ta'ala. Until next time, we end and we say, وَصَلَّى اللَّهُ وَسَلَّمَ وَبَارَكَ عَلَى نَبِيِّنَا مُحَمَّدٍ سُبْحَانَ اللَّهِ وَبِحَمْدِهِ سُبْحَانَكَ اللَّهُمَّ وَبِحَمْدِكَ نَشْهَدُ أَن لَا إِلَهَ إِلَّا أَنْتَ نَسْتَغْفِرُكَ وَنَتُوبُ إِلَيْكَ وَالسَّلَامُ عَلَيْكُمْ وَرَحْمَةُ اللَّهِ وَبَرَكَاتُهُ.